Okay. So we are live. What's up? Welcome everyone to this Agent Intelligent. Super excited to have Isam here. We're exploring everything around AI agents, the future of AI agent builders, kind of like trends and challenges around frameworks, so infra level stuff. I'm Francesco. I'm contributing to ModernDAO. I'm also leading developer relation at Consensus. And today we're diving deep into the technology and vision about like Lagrange and much more. And Ismael, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's an honor to have you on the stream. We made it happen. You want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me, Francesco. There's very few topics that I am more excited to talk about than AI agents, and their intersection with crypto. And so for some background, my name is Ismael. I'm one of the founders of Lagrange Labs. We're a company that specializes in zero knowledge proofs, which is a very broad area and a very broadly impactful technology. But one of the applications that we're the most excited about, that we've been prioritizing the most, is verifiable zk-ML. Put simply, how do you prove that a model runs correctly? How do you prove that an inference is correct? How do you prove it comes from the right model? How do you preserve privacy over inference? And eventually, as you start adding more complexities, how do you prove fine-tuning? How do you prove training? How do you prove explainability and interpretability of models? How do you start taking what is generally a very opaque black box of AI agents and ML in general and LLMs in general, and how do you start adding verifiability and transparency to all of that through cryptography?
Nice. Actually, it's actually a big topic, right? Especially on
Mhm.
the attestation, social graph, social reputation. There is a
Yeah.
lot of interesting things happening. But so how everything kind of like started around kind of like Lagrange? Like what were the kind of the
Yeah.
problem you were trying to initially solve on these like?
Yeah. And so I always like to start with a very broad statement that
Mhm,
Lagrange is a ZK company,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
We started as a ZK company. Everything that we do is hyper focused on generating and applying zero knowledge proofs to different verticals within crypto.
mhm,
We have historically offered a product that is verifiable database
mhm,
computation, so verifiable SQL. We've offered decentralized proving products for many of the very large roll-up teams in the space. Teams like ZK Sync, we announced a deal where up to 75% of their proving over the next 2 years we done Lagrange. We work with teams like Azuki, Gearbox, Frax, EtherFi, Renzo, many others on kind of computing over their on-chain data as they're developing interesting DeFi and GameFi and NFT primitives. And we've launched the Deep Prove Prover, our new zkML prover, because we saw a need in market, right? Tooling around verifiability for machine learning and for AI in general is just very limited right now, right? You can use economic designs, but those obviously have some very large drawbacks like cost of capital and underlying safety. You can use keys, but those obviously have a massive number of potential side channel attacks that exist there and aren't the most secure choice. And then you can use ZK. And people say ZK is too expensive, ZK is too
mhm,
slow.
mhm,
Wait, we got to take a step back.
mhm,
ZK is always too expensive and too slow until it isn't.
mhm.
And we were one of the teams, and probably the team at the forefront of making sure that it isn't and can be applied within industry to AI, both in Web 2 and Web 3.
Nice. Actually, is run us through a little bit like
Yeah.
the differentiator around also like kind of like because I'm hearing always a lot like verifiable zkML kind of like what you guys are doing kind of like different like maybe like it would be helpful to also understand the like the core functionality. So I'm an AI agent
Yeah.
builders. How is the process to onboard on this? What are kind of like the differentiator, like what I should expect on the like verification side? On the ZK side, maybe there is some kind of like matrix latency or something like that.
Yeah. So, um, you know, a lot of people love to say verifiable ML
Yeah.
in crypto. Most of that is not just not verifiable.
Mm,
It's become like this buzzword where
mm,
people love to be like, "Oh, it's verifiable," and I'm like, "What's verifiable mean?" And it goes, "Well, you take my token, you buy it, and you stake it." And it goes, "Okay, that's not verifiable. That's an economic design that makes people buy your token." And so if you look at the space of actual zero knowledge machine learning, there's two companies doing it. There's one other company that has an open source ZK machine learning library that I won't mention their name, but our library, the first version that we released, is 158 times faster on CPU than they are on GPU.
Okay.
And that's us on CPU versus them on GPU. The new version that we're releasing very soon should be about 700 times faster on CPU than they are on GPU for large models. And when we add GPU, you can imagine how large the discrepancy will be in performance.
Yeah.
So we are by far the fastest and most performant ZKML library in the space. And that's something that we're very excited to continue to compound on. So the differentiator I always tell people is just use it, right? We're faster. We're going to be able to generate proofs for larger models.
Yes.
You know, we're a much newer team in terms of kind of the proving backends that we're using, building these tools, and they're much more sophisticated. And our research team is very well respected and acclaimed in the zero knowledge space. Our chief scientist, Babis, he co-directs the cryptography department at Yale. We have a bunch of other researchers and another professor, Dimitris, who is a professor at HKUST, who's focused very heavily on ZKML within academia. And we have a very large team that kind of targets this from just a first principles research background. And that's what gives us all of these kind of market differentiators in terms of performance.
Very cool, very cool. I understand it. I like where this discussion is also going. So like, and speaking about like our architecture side, like for having this performance, like what were the kind of like architectural decision that you were like, you know, running through those kind of like years of building? Is there something worth to share, or it's I'm not even sure. Is this public, the repo that like the testing framework? Okay.
Yeah, Deep Proof is what it's called. So if you look up Deep Proof, you'll find libraries, you'll find the code base. It's all open. You can look at the code, you can look at the circuits. The first version supports CNNs and MLPs.
Yes.
The next version will support LLMs.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, sounds good. And now let's go a little bit on the usability from kind of like the users that are actually like running and using Lagrange. Like any specific, like, do you see any trends going? Like who is using what for what use case? Like I know I don't want to ask trend specific, but are there specific vertical they're saying this is something that it happens the first, I don't know, 6 months of people using Lagrange? I'm assuming, I don't know, public attestation, like specific, like verifiable credentials on, I don't know, layer 2s. And now this is where we're going. Like, I would like to understand also, like, where was it, where is going, and what is kind of like the highlights of those use cases happening?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's frankly my favorite thing to talk about, application. And so I like to think about the applications of ZKML in 3 buckets. The first bucket are protocols that build infrastructure that does decentralized inference, decentralized fine-tuning, that they build layer 1s or they build networks that are focused on being able to allow agents to build on them. So they aren't selling an agent, they aren't selling a model, but they're building tooling for other people to build agents and leverage inference from models. And there's a bunch of those teams in the space that I think are fantastic, right? Like I think the Gaia team is incredible. I think the Ritual team is incredible. I think the Mira team is incredible. And I can go down the whole list and list a bunch of others. I love the Zero G team. And we like working with these teams because they're building these ecosystems with tremendous distribution. And we believe that ZK can augment and provide an additional configurable knob for security for how they're leveraging these kind of decentralized AI ecosystems. And we love integrating with those teams. But those aren't, I would say, on the application level. Those are more infrastructure to infrastructure integration. The second bucket that I'm very excited about are application, like pure use case, where we're integrating with someone whose customer is not another protocol, but it's an end user. And those are examples of things like wallet integrations. There's a couple teams we're working with on this where how do you start building tools within a wallet so you can type in natural language, for example, a series of transactions you want to generate. Like, hey, I want you to buy me ETH, and I want you to LP that ETH into Lido, and then I want you to take that, and I want you to use the receipt token to take a loan. For example, you want to type that out in natural language. Those use cases, you need verifiability. They touch assets. DeFi agents are another example of this that are moving positions around on chain. There's things like deep fake detection with AI. There's things like actual healthcare integration with AI. This is a very exciting one, like federated learning for hospitals. It's privacy preserving. there's a bunch of very interesting stuff that we're building there with teams. And
Yeah.
the final camp is stuff that I think are like moonshot, like
Mhm.
so futuristic, but the
Yes.
market sizes are so large. And we
Ooh.
have as a team been putting a lot of resourcing against that as well. So for
Mhm.
example, autonomous systems, right? What does it look like when you have an agent that's, controlling a series of drones to deliver
Mhm.
food to your house, right? How do you start ensuring that there's verifiability in non-crypto
Mm.
systems that need it? How do you ensure fairness of models and generating proofs of
Mm.
fairness? So if a bank wants to use a model as a teller that's going to issue a loan against you, how do you prove it's not biased? How do you prove that agnostic of race or sex or gender or any type of
Mm.
classification or protected class that someone might be in, that this model behaves fairly towards them? And
Mm.
ZK and large amounts of inference over predefined data sets can be used to prove fairness. And so those are like what I'd consider to be like, wow, the stuff that we build in crypto is broadly applicable and strongly
Mhm.
applicable outside of crypto.
Yeah.
And so those are the three categories, and that's where we're seeing the most demand
Nice.
across all three.
Nice. That's very cool. Yeah. I mean, I see also a bunch of like kind of AI agent builder, maybe Python focus coming from Web 2 because of the Web 3 Rails. So
Exactly.
that's actually super interesting. And I see like very like the fact that you can 24/7 fetch data across different like protocols is something that if you think about open banking talks, how long for actually open specific like banking
Mhm.
API, like I understand why also like Web 3 Rails are extremely like strong value prop for
Exactly.
Web 2 agent builders.
And
It's
and one of the great things of ZK is it's
Mhm.
not just Web3,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
when we talk to a Web2 company, we don't have to necessarily say, hey, we're a crypto company, we're a Web3 company. There's nothing crypto related about using our library, except crypto and the word cryptography. It's a cryptography library. And so people can use that even if they don't want to be associated with digital assets in any context.
Mm.
And they can have verifiability of the AI that they're using. And then obviously, I'm very bullish on crypto personally, and I'm very excited about crypto. I run a business that operates principally as our main go-to-market within the digital asset space. And so we expect that the lot of the use case over the next 10 years will be in crypto, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to touch a crypto asset at all if you want to use
Mm.
our library.
Makes sense actually. And do you see like some common kind of like challenges in terms of like the building experience around? It doesn't need to be specific about kind of like building a verifiable ZK. But is there something out there that you say, okay, these are some lessons learned that I see around the developer experience that you can share to other agent builders?
Yeah. So I think this is why I'm very excited about
Mhm.
Mother and what
Mhm.
you guys are building, because I think agentic communication and
Yes.
agentic discovery is probably one of the hardest things right now,
Yes.
especially if you start talking about these very large ecosystems of agents. And so that's an area that I think is right now lacking
Mhm.
for the agent space as a whole. And I think you guys are doing a fantastic
Mhm.
job
Mhm.
addressing that.
This is really good.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm very excited about what you guys are building. Hence why we have some great stuff I think coming out together. So
Yes.
um, I'd also say one of the areas that I see a lot of people very kind of concerned about is hallucinations from
Mm.
AI
Mm.
and asset ownership of sovereign agents, wherein it is very possible in many contexts to rug the agent or convince the agent to give over their assets. Where
Mm.
even with ZK, where you can say, okay, I know for a fact this is the correct model that leveraged this result or that generated this result, and therein I can trust this result. You still have to worry if the model itself um, is giving the correct result. And that's why I think explainability, interpretability, proofs of reasoning, all of that stuff becomes just very powerful over time,
Mm.
because then you can now start verifying proof that the model's not hallucinating and that the correct model is being used. I think that's a big area that I think it's even
Is
from a research standpoint, it requires a lot of net new work.
Yeah, there is a lot of things happening. And random question, like, what is your thought
Mhm.
around open source kind of like AI is actually really happening? Because somehow
Yeah.
like I see also some of the those companies actually running on centralized LLMs. What is your thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think over time
Mhm.
AI will move open source.
Mhm.
Um, Especially if the cost of training a
Mhm.
model decreases. There will be some proprietary advantage that closed source models have, but generally, we've seen that technology sells, technology companies sell convenience typically around technology, right? They sell managed deployments. There's very few services on AWS, I'd argue, that you couldn't download a centralized alternative.
Yeah.
Or sorry, you couldn't download an open source alternative of, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can move off of Redshift and you can use CockroachDB. You
Yeah.
can move off of SQS and use RabbitMQ.
Yeah.
Like you can move off of centralized services onto decentralized open source services,
Mm-hmm.
or at least open source services. And I think AI will take the same kind of trajectory, right? There's no technology moat that persists over decades, insofar as it's just a piece of code.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like interested to see more this kind of like decentralized AI that is truly like also decentralized and open source, building public specific. And I really like what you
I agree.
answered before on the specific, because this is a question that I'm always debating myself. Like, is it too early to speak about social, like agent to agent coordination? I mean, I will like ask you now, right now, exactly the same. Like, do you think it's too early? Should we speak about it? Because I think like, the majority of agent will be agent to agent services, but there is no true kind of specs/standard out there, or there are. Like, what do you think about first on this agent to agent coordination, how we should deal with it, and who could actually build those standards? Are frameworks kind of having this responsibility to build standards? Because I remember, you remember back in the days with NFT standards, you could not move stuff from OpenSea because there was no specs, like, or at least like
Exactly.
comfortable standards. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a fantastic question.
Mm-hmm.
And so this actually gets back, my answer actually gets back to what you asked me before about learnings, right? So I've been in the ZK space for 3 years as a founder at this point. And one of the biggest learnings I've had is that in any emerging technology, you have to talk about where it's going and get people excited about where it's going instead of obsessing about the present state of it. And so with ZK, one of the very big issues was that a lot of the companies early on just started to talk about their benchmarks. Like, how fast is my prover? What does my prover do? And you ask them applications and it's like, oh, ZK rollups. What else? ZK rollups. There's no kind of creativity. There's no excitement. And because of that, the space of ZK has suffered in the last year or so. There's reduced funding. There's really, not very many large, exciting token launches. Because people just talk about present state. They don't like to say, I'm going to paint a picture for you about where this will be in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. What AI has done great is paint that picture, right? When people talk about ChatGPT, they don't talk about the details of the transformer, the details of the data set that's being used to train it. They talk about, this thing transforming society. They talk about AGI and ASI, and they start talking about concepts that are decades in the future. That's what makes AI exciting. And so it's not too early to talk about agentic communication. It's not too early to talk about agentic discovery. It might be a little bit early that we still need some more agents before people like actually grok the power of what this is going to offer. But it's not too early to get people excited about it. It's the right time because it's the way that things are moving.
Yes. And who do you think have the responsibility to build those kind of like standards, right? Similar to like, I don't know, a Web 2 environment, a Web 2, like, I don't know, Open API. Like, who is this responsibility? Like an EF for agents. Like, you need to be also neutral, right? Yeah.
Maybe a Solana Foundation for agents. After the price action recently, but no, an EF for agents. We'll do an EF for agents.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point, right? And that's super interesting.
It's more of a joke.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, but it's super interesting. But I agree also on the foundation side, because right now, I don't know, I saw like IP that sent some specs for like agents discovery. So you actually have specific like kind of, but this is like only if you use kind of like IP, right? And
exactly.
Yeah, that's very kind of like, let's say, a little bit limited, right? And I think also this need to come from like dApps or services, like major dApps or services, so that actually agent will actually include those standards to be compatible with this kind of like specific coordination issues. But sounds good. And I know, like, I wish like we have 1 hour, but I wanted to ask you like one couple of questions more. But think about success. Obviously, verifiable credential, the amount of verifiable credential around an agent is extremely key. But what you will think about, like, what kind of like could be the metrics of us saying this agent is doing a good job, like how you evaluate success and how are smart metrics? Because I'm not sure, like a TVL of agent,
Yeah.
look like AXPT, like what are kind of like metrics that you would say, okay, this is where successful is. I really like there is a kind of like TVL for agent, but for user, like how many AI agent consumer actually consume your agent. That I think is a cool metrics. But what are kind of like those metrics that you think about to evaluate success?
Yeah. So, one of the things I like to say is that
Mhm.
it's very easy to spot directionality in an industry.
Mm,
It's very
yeah,
hard to determine the timelines of that end state outcome. And one of the things that I believe about ZK is that all computation will move verifiable. As the overhead on generating a proof drops to just being the cost of computation, it becomes a second thought where you get verifiability and privacy by default.
mhm,
And so when I say think of AI, we're discussing one of the most impactful forms of computation
mhm.
that's around, that has the most broad set of impacts that are downstream of of what it does. And so I want to see a world where all AI and all machine learning is verifiable and proven. It's proven how the models were trained. It's proven the data it was trained on. It's
Mhm.
proved that these models are fair. There's proofs of the explainability and interpretability so that the results that are being used autonomously in systems aren't the result of a hallucination or something that's going to be detrimental to a downstream application.
Yeah, yeah,
There's proof that the correct model was used, right? So that
yes.
the inference was in fact from the right model, so that nobody sat in the middle and changed something, right?
Mhm.
That's what we need as a primitive of our entire society is going to run on top of AI, right?
Yeah,
I can't have my self-driving car veer off the road and hit a pedestrian because the model hallucinated or someone tampered with the signal and swapped out
yes,
something in the back
yes.
end. Like there needs to be verifiability as a primitive all the
Agree,
way up and
agree.
down the stack.
Yes.
And that's what success looks like. Success looks like every single AI model in the world, every single agent using verifiability, using ZK at its core.
Yes, yes, I agree, agree. I mean, that's was kind of always the premise why kind of like Modder had to exist, because if you've
Exactly.
been around like with DeFi Summer, so many users got racked because of the forked dexes, right? And with the agent will
Exactly.
be very similar. So building social
Mhm.
reputation with on-chain verifiable credential is key. And until we are not having like some kind of like specific like social reputation around this, I think like AI agent consumer will not have the
Mhm.
full kind of data and trust this data to actually consume these future agents. Because right now we are thinking
Exactly.
about social agents, but think about when we're starting having, and there is already kind of DeFi agent actually delegating your own treasury. So there is a lot of like
Mhm.
things that social reputation need to happen right now. And I think even verifiable credential is one of the strongest use cases right now that is really coming out because of this agent development. And it's super excited about it. So coming back to Lagrange, like, so what is happening next? Like, what you guys are cooking that obviously you can mention to those AI agent builder hearing us right now.
Yeah, so we have a very exciting experience that's dropping in about an hour and a half that we call
Oh,
Turing Roulette. Yeah, it is basically like AI chat roulette, where you
oh,
have to determine if you're communicating with a chatbot or a person. And you have some points and some rewards tied into that in an interesting way if you guess correctly or not.
it would be
Um,
hard to
so
find
it's
out
going to
which
be
is
very
which.
cool. It's going to be
Yeah,
very cool. And it's like the old game chat roulette if you remember that from back in the
yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but we're very excited about seeing that kind of come out, and I think it's going to kind of give people a little bit of a tease of why it matters if
Mm-hmm.
AI is verifiable, right? It
Mm-hmm.
gets kind of scary if your entire digital presence is something that you don't know who you're interacting with, right?
Yes.
Is the AI tutor of your kid a person in Texas, or are they
Mm-hmm.
uh, a model, right? Are they a chat GPT? Is the person you're communicating with on a dating app, are they a person or are they
Yeah.
a chatbot? I mean, it gets scary if your entire
Yes.
digital world is opaque and you
Yeah.
don't know if you're talking to a person or
Oh
another
yeah, but I'm thinking about
or
also
a robot.
sort of through of like a journalism, sort of through of specific like deep fakes,
Exactly.
interviews. There is
All
a
of it.
lot of things. How you know that you're speaking to the right
All of it.
Francesco, like not
Exactly.
the agent.
Exactly.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. No, Ismael, thank you so much.
Exactly.
I think that's
Likewise.
there is a lot of like things happening. I really like. I will also like trying to onboard on your docs. Definitely want to understand a little bit
Mhm.
more, and looking for also on the mother side what is happening we're doing together. And yeah, anything else that you want to kind of mention to all the agent builders hearing us right now, like resources, things to check, use case
Yeah.
missing to build.
I would say the collision of ZK and AI is going to be large this year,
Yeah, yeah.
and even larger next year. So if people want to bet on an area that's going to become incredibly, incredibly valuable
Mhm.
and incredibly impactful in the space, it's at that intersection.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, sounds good. Isma, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we're probably meeting each other in some other conference or virtually. And yeah,
Would be
thanks.
wonderful.
Yes, it will be. And thanks everyone also like for listening, asking questions. We are sending some links. Also, if you're building agents, you have problems building agents, or just want to show what you're building, feel free also to mention in this Hello Mother. We have a specific kind of like office hour for agent builders that are using different frameworks, and I think like that's just cool to share and build this together. So thank you so much, and thanks for hearing this Agent Intelligence. Thank you so much, Ismail, and to all actually Lagrange team continuing like cooking and building. And to the next time, thank you so